All right, we've started, Seth. So happy that we've connected again. Just a little context for everybody that's viewing this. We were introduced with a mutual friend who is an amazing soul herself, just an incredible human being. And through her intuitive sense, she garnered that you and I need to connect, and we connected on Saturday for the first time, and it was like a whole reunion that we it was a whole reunion, man. I felt your energy, man. You are by far a very beautiful human being with a beautiful heart, and it was such a pleasure to have that conversation. So I thought, let's circle back because there was so much magic happening in that call, and I thought, why don't we record this and see if there's any value for anyone. So whatever comes out now, let's let it be. So so
I
thank you
love
for
that. I
thank
love that.
you
Yeah,
for taking.
all the magic happens in the moment, and that's what
That's right.
many of us have forgotten, right? So it's like getting to that place when we realize like we don't always need to be in the past or the future. We don't even need to script out what our next moves will be. It's like we just got to surrender to what is, and then it happens. Like,
So it's funny you said what is that is moment, right? That present moment awareness. That and there's so much to be said about present moment awareness because the future is a whole bunch of present moment awareness, and so is the past, right? Um, wow, yeah. So we were going some deep deep rabbit holes, as it were, and I just wanted to explore those a little bit more robust. So we were just before we got on the call, we were just talking about publishing, and how important it is because right now you see that there's a handful, like really there are a handful of Goliaths, Amazon being one of them, and small printing presses are it's quite a task for them to get published. Not only publishing, but just media as a whole. And I don't know what your thoughts on this are, but my thoughts are that this whole paradigm is collapsing, and there's a real hunger and a real yearning for stories that resonate with people, right? I mean, we're going to go into your story, and I love to for you to tell people your story because you got a whole book associated with it, right?
yeah,
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 and it's profound, and how you are here by virtue of your past is just incredible. But
yeah.
just go back to the publishing part of that. So tell me what you think about that.
So I think it's obvious to anybody who's paying attention that we're witnessing a collective, somewhat catastrophic collapse of really all of these systems, the environmental system, the journalistic system, the meat, like almost every system that has gotten our world to this place that is somewhat derived from this like postmodern industrialized type of civilization. We're witnessing that they are no longer working in a
Mm-hmm.
way that is sustainable to creating a healthy and better world. And so in the midst of all this is like, okay, as things collapse, there's the opportunity for something new to emerge. And what is new is what we're all starting to tap into and realize. It's not new at all. It's something very ancient,
Right,
but it's something very unifying. It's something that we all know, but don't remember that we know, kind of thing.
right.
But it's coming to that place where we're starting to wake up and remember that we've always known what this is really about and what this has the potential to be. And it's interesting talking about publishing and media and all this. I've been on the front lines of media exposure with my businesses and stuff in a very negative way. You know,
Right.
I've
Usually,
had them just it's what is promoted is just so salacious and so old, and it's just like it's all entertainment based and it's nothing substantive of real value.
well, I would go a step further. I think it's destructive. I think it divides people, and it was there's a whole narrative from the 50s on that really has gotten people more divided on on culture, on race, on religion, on whatever that is. You know, a society divided is really the best thing that could happen for the powers that be overall. A
Yeah.
society united under one voice, under the auspices of the heart, with love, because I think that's possible. That's when society changes 100%. That's when the world changes, right? And this is what I want to be a part of. This is who I want to connect with, like-minded people. You know, I'm fed up with the world that I live in. I want to do something about it. And that's my call to arms, you know, in a way that I think for myself is unifying. I want to talk about things that bring us together as opposed to things that divide us, you know?
Hence what you were saying about like the need for media or things of that nature that are much more raw and real and heart-based, because they're, you know, like the book publishing industry, like the music industry. You know, we know that these industries for the most part, especially music and, you know, television and film and all that, they've been domineered with exactly what you said. It's like media-based propaganda type stuff that is literally, it's almost like divide and conquer. It takes people out of the magic, like the part of us that is true. For me, what is truly entertaining, and I know for most people they just couldn't imagine this, it's literally sitting still, being quiet, and just relaxing so deeply, and then perceiving from that moment. Now, I know that would sound boring to a lot of people, and it can be at first, because, you know, you're going through the mental chatter, you're getting to a point where you're releasing all these things that prevent you from being able to do that. But when you do, when the mind quiets down, when the body quiets down, and you're able to perceive things from a level that is coherent with the heart, that is in coherence with the natural world around you, my God, it's like there's no shortage to how entertaining, how enlightening, how just inspirational that can be. And it's interesting, I found myself like, I don't watch movies. I don't, like, every once in a while I'll try to start watching something, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do it. And then I just literally will sit down and just either shut my eyes and go inward or look outside in nature. And it's the same experience, you know, like there's something that we have lost touch with as individuals and as a species. And media, like we're saying, could be geared in a way that tells stories of people who are disconnecting and want to reconnect. And that's what you and I are doing. Like, we're connecting together as two beings who've had this journey,
Yes.
who want to see each other live in the type of world that we know is possible.
Well, and I want to see your gifts flourish. I want to see you maximize whatever your God given. That's of interest to me, right? And I want to bring out the best in people, because the, I think there's a divine essence that's been so obfuscated from all the programming that when people really tap into it, they're kind of taken aback. You know what I mean? There's been so much trauma from a very early age and such minimalization for everybody, and that they're not these great multidimensional divine beings, and finding it. That's what I think the remembering is, quite frankly, you know. And this may sound absurd to some people, going, you know, what are these guys talking about? Like, what are these guys smoking, right?
Yeah.
But I can attest, and I'm sure you can attest, that we've tapped into that. We understand what that is right now. And that's really what you're talking about, is when you raise your vibration to a certain level, things that are not integrity, that are not in integrity, they can't even approach you in that way. It feels off. It doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? And that's really what I've been finding as well with media. I stopped watching TV for years. But one of the things I love, I'm a film aficionado, right? So I'll look at, you know, Akira Kurosawa. I'll look at French cinema, which I love. I look at Italian neorealistic cinema. It's like art for me, right?
Yeah.
So that I can still see, but all the Hollywood stuff, even some of the independent stuff, I can't even watch it now, man. I turn it on and it's like, I'm so bored already. So
All the same stuff. It's like, it's almost like it just brings you into this fear-based survival type of mentality
right,
where the true division starts, because not only are we being divided as a species and as a culture and all, like there's division all across the board, but the true division begins within ourselves. And I don't think, like, I know that by coming together, by creating projects, by doing all the things that we're talking about doing, we want to address the root symptom we want to address the root cause of all these symptoms.
great. So this is a good segue then to get into my personal trauma, as it were, and how it kind of played out in my life. And I'll make commentary, ask questions as you see fit. In me sharing, the intent is that people can pick out what resonates for them within their lives, and then I want you to share your story as well. So I've kind of shared this story in other videos, but I was born in Greece. My parents were somewhat affluent in the in the town that there were, and my parents decided very early on that they wanted to go out to another country, and they picked Canada as the land of opportunity. So they decided to come here. Unfortunately, my sister and I, we were left behind. And very early on, I was 5 years old. Very early on, I had the sense of abandonment. This sense of pain and loss, and that kind of played. I mean, I realized in my 5-year-old body the immense amount of pain from losing. Losing is the perspective. Losing your father and mother and having the uncertainty of the uncertain just period of what's going to happen in the future. That pain, I couldn't even begin to describe to you what I was so in touch with it, and I've been letting go years over years. There's still just something I realized that there's still a little
You
bit.
were left behind. What do you mean by left behind?
So my parents, the intent was for them to come to Canada for 6 months, earn a chunk of cash and then come back and then kind of reinvested back into the community that they were. 6 months became 2 years.
Oh my God. So you were literally physically left.
Right. My sister and I were left behind. And, I talk to my sister about this now, and, she has a different perspective on it. I have a different perspective. It's really our own character. I don't listen. I've resolved that issue with my parents. I absolutely love them. I adore them. They did what's right for them. And that's not something that's really important for everybody else to understand. Parents are only capable of with the skills and tools that they have in front. And I like to believe that every parent does what they feel is the right thing to do at that point in time. It's hard sometimes making decisions, but as a parent, I'm thinking to myself, I've made a couple of decisions where, like, fuck, I hope they don't go to a psychiatrist after this. you know and I talk to my kids about that too, and they understand. So I have a very open communication. However, that pain, though, Seth, for me, was the first indicator that I didn't really want to participate in life. So I kind of just checked out. I was a passive observer. I just allowed life to manifest in the way that it needed to. I didn't actively co-create, right? And I tried a couple of times. I came over to Canada eventually. I went into school. I made some friends, but I kind of like was shown the same thing, where if you make close connections with somebody, they're only going to disappoint you, right? And so in time, I just checked out, man. It was just me. I was lone wolf. That's all I was, right? That didn't work. It got to a point where it didn't work because, I'm self-imposing. I become a lone wolf in that way. There is no joy in experiencing life by yourself. And more importantly, when you're not actively co-creating, meaning, you're not living the life that you were intending to live, things become a lot more bleak, right?
Yeah.
And we all have these moments in life sooner or later. Sometimes we have them very early in life or midlife, or even at the end of the life, but something paramount happened to me, and it was like that metaphorical Mack truck. And at that point in time, the universe was telling me, you have to decide. This is your point now, decide. And so I've made that decision at that point in time, and I've never looked back. And life is, I'm telling you, it hasn't been easy up to this point. Nothing worth having is easy, in my view.
Yeah.
But when you persist, when you're adamant about this is right, this is what my soul calls, then you pursue that with all your might. And at least now I can, if I die tomorrow, Seth, be like, I have no regrets because I did what I needed to do, right? And there's so much to be said, I think, in what I observe from in life and people around me, that they're living a shadow of themselves. They're living a part. They're not fully living. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying that I've been there. I see it. And I think that life for most people, if they make certain difficult decisions, can be so much more joyous.
No doubt about it. No, I mean, that's a lot of what we're experiencing. We're coming to the end of like this part of us that is stuck or traumatized or stagnant, and we're starting to move, and we're starting to move into something new. And what that new thing is has the potential to be something really profound because it's already there. There's like a predominant aspect of our awareness that can be activated by just a few simple things. And it's like you said, life isn't easy, but it is simple. And that's the thing. We've complicated our perception of self and reality and everything so much that we've made it so complicated that we've forgotten that we have the ability to focus on a much more simplistic thing, that when we do focus on it, it leads us into an expression of life that, even though it might not be easy, it has the potential to be easier or not as challenging.
You camp, right? Do you camp?
Yes, I do.
All right. So, for me, camping is profound because you're really connecting with Gaia in a way that you haven't connected before. And, there's a rhythm, especially if you're working 9 to 5 job, there's a rhythm that when you go to work, it's that. And when you start to go camping, you start to follow another rhythm altogether. That's the natural cycle of life, right? You go to bed when the sun goes down, depending, what that is. You wake up when the sun rises, you eat relatively clean, especially if you're hiking and portaging across. It just feels more integrative on day to day. Now, taking that model and following that model within everyday life, that's really where I think the whole community-based system is going.
Absolutely. Look, I had a question too, when you were telling your story. I wanted to ask more.
Sure.
As a result of being left behind and feeling the abandonment and the trauma and the things that brought up into you, how long do you felt like it took for you to fully face and resolve that to the best of your abilities? And the reason I ask that is because, and this is why it's so important that we tell our stories, that we get others who have amazing voices to tell their stories, because I observe, similar to what you were saying, you see people living like a shadow of the life they have the potential to live. But we're all born with such sensitivities that we're taught to almost blunt, right? Our sensitivities get blunted from all these different things. And we're taught by the standards of the world that that's normal. Like, men are not supposed to feel their feelings, and, little girls should be seen and not heard. Like, all these different programs and conditions have made it so that we've blunted our sensitivities. And I see a lot of people who've had who hasn't? Everybody's had something that happens to them, but they live most of their lives in almost like one long emotional reaction or one long suppression of their own greatness, their own potential, their own possibility. And it seems like it's rare that people are even able to recognize what happened to them, much less come to terms with it, move on from it, and then take on something greater.
Well, and recognize it, as we talked about on the weekend, that it's an initiation. Life is full of initiations. I was in that victim mentality. I was in that, why is this shit happening to me? Meanwhile, I look at with my vision outward, and there are people in my view that are more blessed than I have been. I felt like the forsaken child of God. And I wasn't. I'm not. I don't think I'm a bad human being. I'm pure as I can be, and but yet it's like the story of Job, where Job gets punished for thousands of years. And what did Job realize after that? Persistence, patience, and he overcame all of the challenges that really is what it's about. Because I think when you're immersed in that situation, I think awareness is one thing, but to have the tenacity to say, is this really what you want? Because it kind of, life says, is this really what you want? And then it gets difficult. Is this really what you want? And the tenacity you have is the direct proportion of your answer back to life. Hell yeah. Right?
Love that. Yeah, and people, like, you have to recognize that there's something holding you back, and then make a decision with like such firm intensity that, like, okay, I'm going to create something better than what this has been, and then really committing to that. So
yeah, and let's go back, because it's curious. You asked me that question. How long did it take? I'm gonna answer that, but I'm gonna answer it in an indirect way, and then we can answer it directly too. But I keep hearing this thing in my head is like, sooner or later I'm gonna grow up and find out what I'm really meant to do in life, right? How many times have you heard that?
Yeah.
Right? How many people are in work right now that fucking hate their job? They're going in and they're just like, they're dying on the inside, but they're saying, sooner or later, I'm going to grow up and find out what I'm going to be doing in life, right?
Yeah.
And it takes real courage at that point in time when you've got this unsettled perspective within your being to saying, okay, what is it that I need to do in life, right? It takes real courage. Yeah. So I always knew at a very young age. I was blessed with a lot of great individuals, a lot of amazing, cool people where they were really very determined, and they knew very early in life what they wanted to be, whether it be an artist, whether it be doctors, whether it be musicians. They knew very early on. And I kind of like questioned myself, as like, why the fuck don't I know? Like,
right.
What's wrong with me, right?
Yeah.
But so I always had this inner voice kind of guiding me, but there was no real direction moving forward. I knew that I was good with people. I knew that I was a healer. I knew that everyone came to me, and everyone still comes to me to find relief in the pressures that they find day to day, right? So how do you translate that to
a role in modern society?
Yeah, exactly, right? And so you kind of mold into what exists already, and then you grow out of it and make it your own, right? But you need to take the first step. And for me, I don't know, I think we've talked about the dark night of the soul. And I think the dark night of the soul for me is when you're understanding, when you've collapsed all that you can in that knowing. It's like a reawakening, or a rising up from a new being. You've gotten all this information, you've reached at the limit, and you can't, that paradigm doesn't reach anymore. So there's a collapse happening. And then I've had 3 of those already, right? So for me, and this, I just had one, the last couple of years, and still molting into something that I know I'm still becoming, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like you said, and it's this, and it's funny, Mina and I are going to talk a lot about it, and I think more people are, but it's like you said, that word initiation, and it's actually on my book. That's the subtitle. The
Oh,
book's
wow.
called The Fight to Enlight, and then the small subtitle under it is Initiation Through the Heart is the Only Way to Win.
That's mind blowing. That's mind blowing because, obviously we've connected under the heart, right? To me, this is all my work and what I've been doing the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Everything's heart based, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, it's interesting because the word initiation and everything you're talking about going through, in a lot of ancient cultures, initiation was like what it was all about. It was something that was very culturally understood and both expected and anticipated. Like if you were to go up through the ranks of your own self-development, or through your own place within a certain culture or a tribe or something, you would be expected to undergo some things that are going to put you to the test, right?
yes,
And obviously, as we know from lots of stories and things, some of those initiations are just straight brutal. They could be like total sacrificial death, like,
well,
but
and you know why they do that, right? They do that because conviction, right?
yeah,
So they put you under those circumstances because they, the tribe, the mystery schools, whatever that initiation is, they want to know that you are convicted moving forward on whatever that is, to the point that you may die, right? That
yeah.
you may succumb to death. That's how important it is.
It's so important. And right. And depending on which school of thought or which perspective you're looking at it, like certainly there's like the external view of initiation, which is like working up through the ranks or facing something. But the internal
Yeah.
cause or form of initiation is very different. It's like it comes down to how much do you trust whatever appears to be happening, and can you find it within yourself to work through the intensity of whatever that situation is with the faith or the trust or something, to know that when you come out on the other side, you're going to be different, you're going to be elevated, or you're, even if it breaks you down, you're going to find the ability to heal and become more whole after it. And so this idea of initiation is something that we don't, this culture, that this Western culture that we've all been living in for hundreds of years now, it's something that people are not familiar with. And because they're not familiar with it, they automatically go into, like you said before, it's this victim mentality, right? When hard things, because in many ways, like, it's almost like there is no culture, right? Like a lot of cultures have been, they've evolved and they've developed, some of them over thousands of years. Some of the dynasties in China were, thousands and thousands of years of living in harmony with nature. And this happened everywhere. I mean, you
Yes.
know, so this is what we're doing now, is like, it's new, it's like an entire global population of people living lifestyles that are, for the most part, very removed from natural law, both on the earth and in the cosmos.
Yes.
And so there's no script for this, really. We're seeing that it's not working, or it's causing a lot of damage to everything, the world around us, to ourselves. And people don't know that they have within them the ability to connect to something that will allow them to not only get through the trials and tribulations and challenges that they face in their day-to-day life, but that will offer them the opportunity to realize that there are self-evident solutions already available for all of this.
Oh,
And
it's
that through our own unique blueprint as a human being, we get, even though there's universal solutions for everything that's happening now, we as individuals have our own unique blueprint and our own stamp, you could say, that allows us to express these universal truths or these universal solutions in our own unique way. And going back to what we were saying earlier, of like coming together and forming tribe and partnerships and organizations and all these different things, it's doing it with the intent and the idea and the empathy that I want the best for you. Like, I want you to have and be everything that you deserve to be when you're in tune with this energy that's beating your heart, that's allowing you to perceive reality through your human senses.
right.
I know that when you are truly aligned with that, then your own creativity and your own ability to do something that is just amazing is going to be enhanced. And it's almost like we've been trained and conditioned and taught how to compete with each other.
Yeah.
Right? That was the one thing that I learned right away in school. Like when I was a kid, I grew up in the woods, didn't have to deal with any of that until I started going to school.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, the trauma and intensity of being taught to compete with one another. And I never got that in the beginning. I'm like, why? What's this whole vibe of like competition? And it wasn't until I got older that I realized that we were being taught to compete with one another so that essentially a pecking order could be established to figure out who was going to play what roles in society, who's going to be the more active, who's going to be the more passive. All these things are being taught to us as a way to not only create separation amongst each other, but where it counts the most, separation within ourselves. Because when we're competing with and when we're trying to like one up somebody or, we're doing that to ourselves. And I don't think you were recording when you mentioned this before, but it's like we're getting to a point in the world where many of us are waking up and realizing and taking responsibility for the part of us that is perceiving the imbalance around us as something that is coming forth from within us.
Well, and most people don't understand that though, Seth. I mean, in this world of duality, we chose to incarnate in this body in this dual sense, this 3D world, because the opposites, love, hate, pain, whatever the opposite of pain is, joy,
Pleasure, right? Yeah.
pleasure. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can tell I have a lot of that.
Who doesn't, right? Who doesn't?
But the whole point there is that it's through the opposition that we chose to learn that. But unity consciousness is a whole different thing altogether, and this is what we're slowly getting into. Our internal environment is a projection of what the external environment is. So if you want the external, so collectively, when we change our internal environment, our external environment, I think we talked about Rupert Sheldrake and the Morphogenetic Field on Saturday, right? So
Who's,
just
by the way, who's now, I told you about my friend who's about to publish this unbelievable book
on water, right?
on water, like water crystallography. Rupert Sheldrake has now put his stamp of approval on her work. So
Wicked.
we're excited about that. Yeah.
Amazing. That's truly amazing. And water is a whole different rabbit hole we can get to as well. It's it's those simple things in life that we've dismissed as being innocuous and not worthy. But what the ancients have realized, that those simple things in life have actually deep meaning, because it's like there was a whole piece, and then the whole piece got fragmented, like puzzles, and then they got dispersed, and then now it's meaningless, right? It's only when we can take those pieces all together and kind of assemble them back and go, whoa, water can do that. This is what your friend is doing, right?
Yeah, even that and like a whole other level. But that's essentially it. What you said, that's the internal process that many of us, if not all of us, are coming to terms with. and finding a way to facing them. And it's like you said before, and I think by coming together and doing everything we're doing, we're here to help simplify this for people. Because it isn't complicated. It's actually not complicated at all. There's just a few kind of fragmented pieces that when you understand from the level of the way we process things is very linear, right? That's how we've been taught to process things in a linear type of way. But the way we're coming to reprocess things, you could say, is multidimensional. And that's hard for a lot of people to understand in this linear fashion. But it's almost like using the intellect to unlock the intellect. And that leads to a greater perception of what is possible.
Yeah. I don't know if intellect has played such a destructive role in my view. And, intellect for me is part of the destruction, part of the masculine energy that's been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Prior to the masculine energy coming in, we were in feminine energy. And the predominant way of feminine energy is through the heart, right? So, we talked about this again, and people have an idea of what I do as far as heart math goes, but heart math has been on the vanguard of proving what the mystics have already known for thousands of years, from Rumi to onwards, that the heart is that sacred organ. It's that point of singularity, is that transformative and all-knowing organ, right? Now, that's from a spiritual perspective. From a medical perspective, it's just a heart, right? Have you heard those stories about heart transplants where a young kid dies, they're 16, he's got a certain dietary, he likes to eat French fries or he likes chocolate, and his heart gets transplanted to like an older guy, for example, and where he hasn't had those urges before, those urges come to him, right? Like, that's profound though, right?
It speaks to, obviously, there's like the energetic imprints of whatever has been imprinted in it as a result of somebody's choices and lifestyle. But it also speaks to this idea of us almost being like an antenna for consciousness, right? Because if somebody dies and they've lived a life a certain way, and that heart gets put into somebody else, and that person who's already had their own life and they have their own patterns that are imprinted into the water and the rest of the system of their body, suddenly have new habits and perceptions and things. That speaks to a lot about the energy fields of everything. And that's where we're going. And it might not be where everybody's going, but like you and I know that this is the kind of quantum leap, or this is the kind of perceptional evolutionary process that individuals really need to start to come to terms with. And if they do, then this gets a lot more simple,
Well, it's a choice, right? I think everything in life is a choice, right? For some people, from an evolutionary perspective, could be too much of a leap for them, right?
Yeah.
And I have a lot of compassion for individuals like that. But there are people like you and I and other people that are like, let's get this done already, because I've been waiting for a lifetime for this.
If not lifetimes, right? Yeah.
If not lifetimes. Yeah, exactly. So for me, it's impatience right now and making that leap. Let's go back to the heart again. And Rupert Sheldrake, and so heart math has already proven scientifically. They've got over 300 peer-reviewed papers, and what they've proven scientifically is that your thoughts create the emotions, and then every time your heart beats, your emotions are on a carrier wave that's an electromagnetic field, toroidal field around your body. So, bad thoughts, bad emotions, bad, toroidal field or energetic field all around. Now they go a step further. That's one of me. And if you're doing that, and if somebody else is doing that, if you got a whole humanity that's doing that, you're actually uploading that into what Rupert Sheldrake called the morphogenic field, or within this planet. It's just like a memory imprint of energy. So if we have more people in division and hate and these negative emotions, where do you think we're going to be as a society? However, if we actually take responsibility for our own emotions and our well-being, and really focus on love, divine love, not this romantic notion of what love is, but actual divine love, right? And project that out and get more people connected to that, man, that shift is just going to be bananas.
And that's kind of what I was saying, like, and intellect means different things to different people, but what I meant by using the intellect to unlock the intellect is like getting people to realize this stuff. It's like you said,
right?
The idea of love that most people have is like, I love my wife or my husband or my cat or my dog or my child or this. So like a lot of people associate the word love with human types of love, right? Like what we're conditioned to think love is.
Conditional love.
Conditional love, exactly. But when you and this is what I always say to people, like, okay, and this is what I mean by using the intellect to unlock the intellect. It's like, okay, are you beating your heart?
Yeah.
And they're like, if they're like, I don't believe in God or I don't believe in a higher power. It's like, okay, are you beating your heart? No. Okay, well, what is? Right. What is causing your heart to beat? What's causing your lungs to breathe? What is causing these mind-blowing autonomic functions that are happening at faster than the speed of light all throughout your body that are so mind-boggling? Like if you read all this, and I'm sure you have, and like if anybody reads the autonomic and physiological responses that are taking place in our body that is created by bioelectricity. It's like a bioelectromagnetic form of energy that can be measured with some scientific devices, but only to a certain extent.
Right.
It goes beyond that. So when you really use your mind to consider, okay, something is happening and I'm not doing it, nobody else is, then it causes you to almost release your mind. You're like, instead of just being so focused on me, my past, my problems, this happened, that happened, staying in that victim mentality.
Yes.
It's like, and these initiations that we talked about, they bring you to this point where you just like, oh my God, I can't take it. It's too much. It's too much. I'm going to die. I can't, I'm afraid, and this and that. But if you find it within yourself to just like trust and surrender, which usually happens through the heart, especially in really intense initiations, then suddenly your focus just expands. It opens. And the type of love that you are referring to becomes self-evident, because this idea of divine love, or like, these are all just words that are trying to give name to something that's experiential. But this experiential feeling of what love is becomes self-evident when somebody goes through quote unquote ego death or a hardcore initiation, or even just a diligent practice of connecting to the energy of the heart, which that's what brought you and I together. Heart Math Institute, like you said, they've proven this. So we are at a point when individuals really, if they take responsibility for learning to love themselves, like making the internal world more alive than the outer world, they connect to that love. And then they know what you're talking about when this divine love.
Yeah. And that is the beginning, because I like to think that there's going to be a whole school of mentorship of what it means to be living in the heart on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. And so what I've surmised up to this point is that, with all the heart walls that we've constructed because of life, because of the programming, because of choices, those walls need to come down. Well, what's the first step? First step is really taking those walls down. And how do you do that, right? And
explain a little bit what a heart wall is, because I think that's important for people to understand.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So for me, I'll look at my example. When I was 5 years old, I had the sense of abandonment, right? So I had a traumatic experience. That traumatic experience for me created the sense of mistrust in society. So
Mm.
what I then did is erected a energetic wall over my heart that says, no one's coming here. Because in my experience, the moment somebody came here, I experienced pain, right? And
Yeah.
that really is what the heart walls are. All of us have heart walls. Some of them are very, very high. Some of them are kind of like, a little bit. Some of them are very, very low. But none of us, very few of us, are completely surrendering to all that is in life, because that's the harder part. Living in the heart means being vulnerable and open and being to the experiences and looking at what those learning opportunities are in that moment, as difficult as they may be, right?
Yeah.
So that's what living in the, for me, that's what living in the heart. But as I was saying, the first step to that is healing yourself. And the only way that I know to heal yourself is through self-love. There's a lot of programs on self-love, but I only know one program that I actually can endorse, speak highly of, and that's my good friend Tara Love Perry. She's got an amazing program called I Love You Me. Now, there's 7 steps associated with that, and the first step is connecting with yourself. Connecting with yourself. Now, that's profound, Seth. How do you connect with yourself?
Yeah.
The most simple way to connect with yourself is the breath, right?
Yeah.
And we went through an exercise last night, and I did breath work. I've been doing meditation. I teach meditation. I think I'm humble enough to know to kind of open myself up to say, maybe I don't know this, or teach me something that I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happened. I was taught something that maybe I was resistant to let go, and that's connecting with the breath. The breath is so simple and it's so profound on so many levels, and focusing on that in the most simple ways and holding yourself with a breath, that creates reverberations of knowing that then begins to open yourself up even more, right? So I highly encourage, if people are watching this and they want to know, there's a free ebook right now you can get. It won't be there for free for long. So I encourage people to download it and to play with the book. It's a profound program.
From Tara?
From Tara, yeah, from Tara. It's iloveyoume.co.uk. Yeah, it's highly, highly recommended. So I'm going to become a practitioner in the program, and I'm hoping through that this program is I want to see this program all across the world, and I know it has large voids to fill in America, in Canada, in Mexico, in South America, all over the world.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. But America is, I think, usually the somewhere where we need to go first, I think, because there's so much healing that's required there. And America is usually the leader of everything else that happens in the world.
Yes, we're trend makers for sure here, and a lot of it is based upon the media and the things that we're talking about creating a new model of. So
Yeah.
that's great. I'm really looking forward to that. As you were saying it, I know the Heart Math Institute has something called the quick coherence technique.
Yeah.
Which for me it's really simple, right? It's just breathing rhythmically, breathing like a calm rhythmic breath, and just holding an elevated emotion.
Well, yeah. So you're breathing your breath a little deeper and a little slower, and you're really connecting with your breath. You're being mindful with your breath. You're really, in essence, chasing your breath. And as you connect with your breath, you're putting focus on the area of your chest or your heart. So you can see your heart kind of beating. And then as you do that, you can introduce a renewing emotion. And once you introduce that renewing emotion, and believe me, I've had people, have a challenge being introduced to a renewing emotion. So I say, think of a memory then. If you can't think of an emotion, think of a memory, right? Like, I like to think that's you've had at least one memory that is, positive in that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's it. It's amazing how many people don't know how to do that. And it's true. It's like anything that has ever brought you joy. And that's why, like, and this is a whole other topic that we can get into. And it's something that makes people feel kind of weird, but it's a very necessary thing, is the idea of what sexual energy is, right? Because most people know what sexual energy feels like. And if you can get beyond the programs of what you think it feels like to have a genital-based orgasm or sexual feeling, and instead take the memory or the imprint of what that feeling is and be like, okay, that is what creates life, right? Like, it's that feeling is present when life is being generated or created, new life. So when you connect the idea of what self-love can be with the recognition or the understanding or the imprint of what that feeling feels like, then you can start to work a lot more with this quote unquote divine love or this creative energy, because that's what it feels like. The miracle of life is very much orgasmic in nature, but getting beyond all these programs, there's so many. That's why I tell people, like, forget about it for now. Forget about sex. Forget all, like,
Yeah,
none of that even matters for right now. Let's
so
get to.
what are your thoughts on this? Let's talk about, I know it's a label and whatnot, the whole new age movement, or the woke movement, or whatever you want to call it, right? I think it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum of consciousness, it's a spectrum of awareness. And in my view, the last thing that people are enlightened is about conscious sex, right? And so I haven't really seen people really, first of all, it's kind of like taboo. You don't really talk about the conscious sex perspective, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but I think all aspects of their life, they could have, they could be a vegan, or you know a mucus reducing diet, or eating raw food, or being environmentalist, but yet have these sexual practices that are out of alignment, right? That still causes exactly what everything else they've been doing and that's kind of what, you heard the whole term of immortal, being immortal?
Yeah.
Right. So in Egypt, there was this queen and this king, and they were immortal, right? So they would regenerate these physical bodies. They'd live to 200, 300 years, whatever that was. And through a physical process, they would regenerate their bodies. Now, some say that this is a myth, in that, these bodies can't be recreated or regenerated.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of, I wouldn't say a
Of
lot.
course they can. That's like, even the idea that they can't, it's like, we got to get beyond everything. Go ahead. Yeah.
But there's been, I know of a few individuals in life that are kind of mysterious. So Mahavadar Babaji, which is, the founder of Kriya Yoga, brought Kriya Yoga. I mean, he's an immortalist in my view. There was Count de Saint Germain in the court of France, and people I've seen him. There's a story of a young princess that she was 3 years old, and then she met him like 40 years, 50 years later, and he looked exactly the same. Like he hadn't changed one bit.
Yeah.
And people have seen him throughout their certain, hundreds of years of lives, right? So it's pretty profound when you start thinking about, again, what this body can, we don't know what this body can do, Seth.
Oh my God. It is, the whole idea, a lot of people have heard it, the body is a temple. It is truly a temple. And that's why I said, it's funny, I always keep saying this, and like back to the beginning of the conversation, I don't know why I'm saying that a lot during this, but referencing something we were talking about earlier is like, I spend so much time just sitting and being and observing, but it's very much from an internal place first, because when you start to get in touch with your feelings and how things make you feel. And then you get to the realization that you have the ability to generate your own feelings from within you. And
Yes.
that your ability to generate these feelings has no bounds to it, has no limits to it. And the more incoherence you get, right? The more incoherent with your heart you are, the more your brain, the more the rest of your organs start to be incoherent. And when you're existing in that state, then you have the ability to start, because then you're no longer just this person having this human experience. You become this being that is whole, that is balanced. And when that happens, you realize that it's not a physical thing that's just happening here. There's this miraculous energy. There's this energy that's this bioelectromagnetic energy that's allowing all of this to happen. And so when you get beyond your own self and societal imposed limitations, and you start to identify yourself with what is this energy field that is existing right now, instead of the remembered past or the imagined future that's based on fear, then you have the ability to take that energy field that you're present with and direct it into the organs and systems of your body in a way where they start to generate and produce their own electromagnetic signatures, their own. It's almost like alchemy. Like you're
Yes.
taking what you have, you're transforming it into what it has the potential to be. And that's why, like, it's true, we don't know what these bodies can do, but enough of us know, and obviously they've known this, the ancients have known this. There is some serious, beautiful magic and potential and awe, and like, this is it. Like, this is where it's happening. And it's time for us to start to, instead of, and Nina always says this, and it's so funny, she's saying to me, this is the mutual friend who introduced us.
Yeah.
And I had another friend that always say this too. Von Meter, his name was. He was a Kennedy impressionist in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
He had a huge career. He sold more albums in 1963 than the Beatles did.
Holy smokes.
He's amazing. He's an amazing human being. He's passed now, but she would say it and he would say it, I'd rather rise in love than fall in love.
Oh,
right?
That's beautiful, man. I
Yeah.
love it.
So he had a song about it. It was great. It was so funny because, it means many different things. The highest aspects of it is literally ascending, rising into this potential of love, where a lot of people fall in love, right? They get stuck into these conditional forms of human love, where we put these attachments and these expectations and these things that we do it, and we kind of know that if they're not in alignment with our higher self, we're going to be let down eventually, right?
100%. 100%. Always the case.
So getting it, and it's funny, my friend Abbott would always say, the Viagra song, I'd rather rise in love than fall in love. Just a funny thing. So there's many different ways of looking at it, but it is literally choosing to rise in love with this unconditional, non-local, but totally local, this totally impermanent aspect of us that is loving us into existence, right? It's not just about, it isn't even really about our ability to love. It's really about our ability to be in alignment with what is loving us into existence.
Unity, essentially, is really what you're talking about. It's really is what you're talking about. And actually, I wanna kind of look at a couple of things. You're talking about feelings, and I think women tend to be a little bit more connected with their feelings than males, and that's a problem in society, quite frankly, in my view. Because the conditioning of males have prevented them from healing within, allowing the programming to be what it needs to be, letting go of all of that, and then going within those feelings, acknowledging them, and then healing from within. So that to me is something that's paramount for me, because the moment we can get men to heal more, then we can start building a more cohesive society and take more personal responsibility. It's not really about men and women in general, but taking responsibility for your own self, right?
Yeah.
And why is that important, Seth? Well, I'm going to dangle the carrot in front. Why you would do this? Have you ever had a heartgasm?
I have, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you have a heartgasm, and that's like a heart orgasm, essentially, where your heart is exploding with this intense energy of love and feeling connected with every living being and just being in the now moment. It's such a profound experience, right? That's coherence at its optimum level. And when you are coherent, what's happening from a heart math perspective is you got the physical, emotional, and psychological, well, they're all aligned. And when you align, your system, your physical system is actually working in its most optimum way, right? And, to your point, directing light or directing energy associated, the Taoists have these amazing systems in they can regenerate organs. They can do some amazing stuff once you tap into the body. They can start recoding, the genes and having, RNA sequences go different ways. And, it's amazing what they can do anyways. So that's my thing on why you would want to start that process. It's going to be hard at first. I'm not going to sugarcoat this for people. It's going to be hard, making that decision to heal the wounds, the traumas that you have. It's going to be hard, but you can make it easier on yourself by surrounding yourself with like-minded people that love you unconditionally, that want the best in you. And there's a lot more communities that are happening right now, right?
Yeah. Which is what we're doing. We're creating this type of community that ushers in this new way of being and that supports people
100%
through this so they don't feel alone because they're not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it can be confusing at times, right? I mean, I know, the path that I've walked, it's so easy. I was saying to a friend of mine, everybody was saying, always choose the higher path.
Yeah.
When you're always choosing the higher path, my view is, fuck, I want to just not choose the higher path at least once.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so easy to do that, but I can't do that. It's not within my being, right? I just, because there's consequences associated with every action, so that awareness is.
It's, I feel like a lot of us have had to go through a lot to get to where we are in this modern world that we live in. But there's so many of us that have gone through so much that have been able to come out of it, that are then able to bring a new level of understanding and support to those who are starting to go through it now, to the degree that we're going to be able to help a lot more go through these things a lot more quickly. And
so how do we make it easier for people?
Learn about heart-brain coherence. Like, this is so essential, as you know, like for people to really learn what it's like to develop heart-brain coherence. To me, that's one of the first most important steps, because you're becoming aware of your breath and your heart.
Yes.
And you're creating a marriage between your breathing and your feeling.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the first thing. Like, when you get into a coherent space, and especially the Heart Math has a great little app that you can have on your phone, and you can watch, because if you're not in a coherent state, as you know so well, and this is for the people here, you're in a stress-based state, right? You're in a beta brainwave.
Yeah.
You're focused on matter. You're not focused on the potential and creativity of life. You're focused on survival.
Yeah.
So your body's producing stress hormones. And a lot of us have lived in this perpetual state of stress for so long. So getting out of that is by slowing down, breathing, getting into the heart, then when you're in a heart, when you're in that stress-based state, the heart's all jagged, the way it shows up like on a heart rate variability monitor.
Yeah.
But when you're in coherence, it's like smooth, like sine waves. They're just waves. And you can tell like the feeling of it is amazing. So I feel like that is one of the first most important steps.
So describe that feeling for people, because I think it's a good thing to have, to make people aware of what that feeling is when you're in coherence. So what does that mean for you?
Well, there's many different levels of it, right? So that's the thing. But the beginning levels of coherence are moving out of stress into relaxation. But it's interesting because, whereas like when you go to sleep at night, you start getting tired, you start falling asleep, and then you go to sleep. This is different in the sense that when you're actively monitoring your heart coherence, your body calms down. You move out of stress, your body comes down, but it's interesting that your mind stays aware. Right. And that's really kind of what we're going towards here. Like, we want to condition and train the body through our own volition, our own intention, to basically calm down, to go to sleep, but keep our awareness bright and aware of what's going on. So from there, then we realize how feelings are, most people are ruled by their thoughts and feelings, right, of the past, that are all stress-based, that are all created from trauma, like whatever the most traumatic event or series of traumatic events that people experience early in their lives that they may not even be aware of, has so deeply conditioned and shaped most of their thought and feeling processes from that point forward.
Yeah.
So coherence, when you realize that you're getting out of that stuff, you're like breaking the habit, right? You're breaking the addiction or the habitual way of thinking and feeling that you're used to feeling, and you're creating new thoughts and feelings. And that's essential.
It's essential because that's how resilience is built, right? You think about, it's like a muscle in a way, right?
Yes.
Everything we do, when we put our full intention behind it and practice and be disciplined with it, we create this muscle. And why do you create this muscle, right? Because it's like a physical resilience, for example. You go to the gym, you lift weights, you get bigger muscles. And why do you create that? Because when you need that physical prowess, you have it, and it doesn't, you have it. Let's just say that you have it. Same thing with emotional, same thing with the mental, and same thing with the spiritual, right? But I think all these things are interrelated. You got to get the physical right first. You got to have that. That's the engine that starts. And then you got to go to the emotional, and then mental, and whatnot. Yeah.
Blipped out for a second there.
Yeah, he dropped there for a bit.
I missed, you said physical. That's where I stopped hearing you.
Yeah. So the physical has got to, it's like an engine, I think, right? So your physical well-being, there's got to be a connection to the physical well-being. So, connecting with the breath, ensuring you have enough water, ensuring the nutrition is right for you. And I don't even go now with vegan-based and meat eating. I just go with like what I'm experimenting with right now. And whatever's right for you is right for you. I really like raw food, and I'm looking at anything that reduces inflammation.
Yeah.
So because the foods there, and usually when you get inflammation within the body, it's because anything you're consuming is acidic. Your body is basic by nature, and that's from the pH, anything that's 7 to 14, more basic, it could be problematic, but you want anywhere between, 7 to 10 pH, within that range. Meat is pH. It has a high acidity, so it produces phlegm. Same with cheese, same with milk. But if you're looking at eating raw, saw this amazing video, man. I mean, Facebook has got a lot of negative things, but one of the things you got to see is like these amazing videos once in a while. And they had this couple, and this lady started to become raw food. She only ate raw foods and vegan, essentially. And she started when she was I think in her early 30s, and her husband maintained the same diet. And they were interviewing them when they were in their 70s. Okay.
Mm,
So he would walk out with her, and everybody thought that was like her niece.
that's
which,
fine. Yeah.
which just explained her whole composition, her whole body. She looked youthful. She looked radiant. She looked like everything got unlocked, right?
Yeah, I used to eat a raw food diet for 7 years. I ate almost 100% raw food diet.
Was that
But
tough?
you know what's interesting? A raw vegan diet. I was gonna say when you were talking about that, because I've tried everything that I could. I'm always looking for. I don't like the word biohack, but a lot of people use that. But I'm always looking for what the best technologies or practices or ways of being that are going to take us to the next level. You know, that's going to take my own well-being to the next level. And I've literally found that the best inflammation reducing technique there is these devotionally cultivated habits of coherence, heart brain coherence.
Right.
Literally, like, I know for me, like, I've gone through hell. Like, I have gone through things that I should not even be alive right now because of. And some of these things were so traumatic. So many of them were so traumatic that in going through them, I realized what was happening to me. And I remember having the thoughts of like, how am I ever going to get over this? You know, like it's going to just like scar me forever. And some of these things really did scar me for a while, but it was by getting into these states, these habitual states, you know. And back then when I was going through a lot of this stuff, I didn't know what heart brain, I didn't know the word or the terms heart brain coherence. It didn't exist, but that's what I was doing.
So
And
tell me, how did you discover that? What was that process? I mean, let people know, what that was for you and how you got around to it and why it worked for you.
so for me, it was something that I realized at a very, like, in my youngest memories, my oldest memories my youngest memories, I'd say, as a child, are just being in nature. And I remember, like, when I would get excited or like get intense, or like I wouldn't feel so connected, you know. But I noticed that when I would just sit outside in nature and I would calm down and I would breathe, then suddenly I would feel a peace, a state of being that, to me as a young child, felt so profound. It felt so almost like I was being, like something was like hugging me. It was like
Mhm.
holding me and hugging me. And it was just this level of support, and like something, some greater force is like holding, like cradling me like a baby, like saying, like, I've got you. Like,
Yeah.
it's that feeling. And I noticed that when I was just calm and in that place, but aware, like we were saying before, like, you want to get calm, but keep your mind aware and bright. That feeling was there. And it was so amazing to me. It was so profound. It was so life changing that I noticed from that point forward in my life that things that didn't support that, things that I didn't want to be a part of, you know? And so to me, it is that. It's like when we choose to get back to this state, which essentially is heart brain coherence. It's, you know,
Well,
and maybe more advanced, and when I say more advanced, I mean in the sense that, you know, heart brain coherence is number one. That's like the first step. Then the more incoherence those two systems become, then the other systems of the body come up. It's like heart brain coherence, then whole body coherence, then you could say whole soul coherence, right?
yeah, and you raise your vibration. You can consciously, I think we said about this, we've talked about this on Saturday. The more love you have, the more light you show, right? And that really is. And in fact, the heart has a heart song. It's my belief, and that's really what I'm trying to do with the world as a whole. The heart song is like in compacted under like mud and all this crap right now because of all the programming. And slowly over time, when you connect with that and the diamond crystalline heart, you let it sing and let it sing its song. You start to radiate from the inside. There is a presence about individuals that have that connection. It's just so palpable, right? And that's to me what it's about, and getting into those states and experimenting. But I want to go back to the whole heart brain coherence. That's that can be tough for people, right? Like, how long did it take for you to get it into a routine? Because I've got clients and I've got guys that they say, oh, this is too simple, or they play around with it for a little bit, but they really don't see the value, and then they come back and they. So what was that journey for you? Because it seems like you're really ingrained in that right now.
So it's like one of these things, like you have to unfortunately a lot of people won't see the value in it until they're like brought to a rock bottom type of experience.
Why is that, do you think? Like, why couldn't we be proactive and actually say, you know what, I heard Seth talk about this, I'm going to research about this, or they can reach out to me or to you at any point in time. I have no problem giving them tools or exercises, but like being proactive about it and putting it into practice and saying, okay, let's see what happens through this if actually we're disciplined. Why could that happen, right?
It can. It totally can. That's the thing. I think, who was it? It was either Joe Dispenza or Bruce Lipton. One of these guys said, you can learn to love in a state of pain and suffering or joy, joy, and like you can choose which one. You don't, but I think what it is people are so habitually ingrained into believing that all they are is this person. I'm Seth. This is my life experience. This is what happened to me. And they're so deeply habituated into this belief that they are only this person having this life experience. And so they are anticipating more of the same of what has already happened to them. So it's almost like they're stuck in a timeline of their own making that they didn't even realize they made, right? And so to break that habit or cycle or timeline or whatever means doing something new. It means embracing something that is new or unknown to what that most predominant habitual cycle is. So a lot of people will be like, oh, it's too simple, or it's this or that, and they don't realize that it's the gateway to the divine. It's the gateway to the profound. It is the gateway to things that we probably, as the summation of the entire species all amalgamated together, haven't even begun to realize the potential of. It's that, But in the beginning, it's people, it's like this, like people don't usually cry out to God if they believe in God or whatever. They don't cry to somebody or something until they've been brought down to their knees, right? They're brought down to their knees and they're just like, God, please. That's usually when people cry out for help, right?
It's because of ego and hubris that, we feel that we are God-like ourselves. It's only when God takes that away from us that we reach out to God. And that's the inverse. That's a distortion, right?
So back to what you said, and you said something like this earlier, the way that we make this change, the way that we incorporate these levels of coherence and the potential they have the ability to represent, is if we don't see the value in it, we have to be open-minded and willing to see if there is a value in it. We have to be objective when we look at our own life and say, you know what, like, I'm not too happy, or I'm not pleased, or I feel like I can do better, when you look at your own existence objectively, or that there's something more. You have to be willing to be objective.
So what does objective mean to you, Seth? So what does that objectiveness look like for you?
So in this regard, it's like almost like looking at yourself from a perspective that's beyond yourself, right? Yeah. So instead of perceiving things in the thoughts and feelings that you're most used to thinking and feeling in, you're almost taking a back seat.
Yes.
And you're just kind of being like, okay, well, I was born, this is what has happened to me, this is what is happening to me. And when you look at your life kind of like that backseat driver and you're just watching it like that, then you start to become aware of certain patterns and cycles that have perpetuated and influenced a lot of your thoughts, behaviors, actions, beliefs, and all that. And it's from that observational perspective that you have the ability to choose if you want to keep doing that, if you want to keep going that route, or if you want to create something better. So people have to want to do that, right?
Well, I would like to think that everybody would want to experience joy and happiness and love and connectedness, and not into like the survival and fear-based mentality, right? I agree with what you said 100%. I think that looking at it from a third person perspective is critical. The only thing, and maybe it's the same as what you're talking about, maybe it's not, I don't know, but the only thing I'll offer more is that I always find it beneficial to look at it from a mindset of neutrality, right? To be somewhere centered and not have the extremes on either side, right? Because once you get into the extremes, they become so turbulent and so emotional that you lose visibility on that whole peripheral view, right?
The polarities absolutely take you out of that middle and balance point. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's such an important thing to cultivate neutrality, because I think there was a studies done with like professional football teams or NFL teams where you've had NFL teams that were struggling, and the mindset that we have is they would vocalize that we're not good, we're not that, and that realization became that, right? So there's something to talk about when you're actually verbalizing what you're thinking. But once you're in a mindset of neutrality, then, and I think it's the beginning of it's like the pivot. Where do you want to go, right?
To me, that's a lot of what cultivating a heart brain coherence state represents, because like I said, you're calming the body down. You're getting out of stress, but your mind's staying awake. So it's like you have a calm body but an alert mind, and that creates much more of a sense of balance and a sense of wholeness. And that's really important. And look, a lot of it is this, and I can speak from my own experience, and many people can, like, even if we want to change, so much of our personality has been habituated throughout our lives that even if we want to change, we have a lot working against us that prevents us from changing. And so on some level, we have to come to terms with what that is, and that can mean many different things to many different people. But on a basic kind of from a biochemical standpoint, I know for me and a lot of the trauma and things that happened, it caused me to become addicted to the own stress response and the chemicals that my body was producing. And I didn't realize that. And as a result of being addicted to, because it's, okay, let me try to simplify this. Like, say somebody beats the shit out of you when you're a little kid, right? You're a little kid, your primary caretaker or somebody that you loved or thought you loved and cared about hurts you really bad. Or sexually abuses you or whatever. It could be anything, any super traumatic thing that happens to somebody when they're a kid. They don't know what's happening. They just know it's traumatic. But their body creates that fight or flight response, right? So the stress hormones start coming out and they want to protect themselves. And we're designed to do that. Like, if something happens, we're designed to, fight or flee, literally. Like, and that's been necessary through a lot of human survival. But we're coming to a point when we realize that it's gone too far in the direction of that, of fight or flight, of survival. And so we have limited our self-awareness to really be focused in these lower centers of our body, which are sexual energy. That's why I said throw all the sexual energy away for now, because very few even know how to use it correctly. But it's like
But
Our,
that's so hard. That's so hard though, Seth. Look at the society that we've lived. I think I've seen a very marked increase of sexualized images from the 80s, and I think it's done deliberately where everything is so hypersexualized right now that
yeah.
both men and women have such a distortion of sexuality now, right? So how do you begin to even maneuver through that difficult terrain? It is a difficult terrain, especially when you're dealing with something that's so powerful, that's creative, right?
It's so primal, right? It's so wild. It's so like, that's why I said 95% of who we are all these emotions and primal ways of being that are ancestral. They're passed down to us through our genetics. And you're absolutely right. It is not easy by any measure. However, there are enough of us going through this
Yeah.
who are realizing what's happening, and we are waking up and we're taking a stand, and we are literally putting our foot down and drawing a line in the sand and saying, you know what, enough is enough. I am not going to live my life in a way that is anything but reflective of the potential that I know to be innate in me already.
Yes.
I am only interested in living my life in a way that uplifts me, that uplifts others, that creates this abounding sense of self-harmony into the world and harmony with others. And it's happening. It's
Yeah.
happening because a lot of us are feeling this. We're going through it. And that's why I said before, I feel like there's a lot of us going through so much that are going to help make this easier for others who, yeah, when they first hear all this, they're like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? What you're going to do is, first, don't beat yourself up. That's like one of the major things. Second, open your heart and mind to the possibilities of what we're sharing here. And if you feel others who support you on this path or on this journey to considering this stuff, great. Okay. But here's the other thing. And it's like, if anybody's listening to this and they're like, whoa, I'm really resonating with what these guys are saying and I feel it, great. But recognize that it's not me. It's not you. It's
Exactly.
not about gurus. It's like all of those old systems are out the window. Yes, there's plenty of teachers. There's plenty that we can learn from. But the best teachers are only there to help remind the student what they already know within them and how to connect to that. Because life is the guru. There is no better teacher than this energy that is beating your heart. And there's enough of us who have gone through this and are going through it that are here to say, hey, look, here's a soul reflective mirror. Like you love what I'm saying, you feel it, you're resonating with it. That's because there's a part of you that you are ready. Yes. Like, and so that's what we're doing. We're like, it's taking radical self-responsibility for how we perceive the world and choosing to not be subjected to the pain and suffering that is innate in our own perception based upon the things we've experienced, and choosing to live in an elevated state of being, in a loving state of being, to because the same thing that causes stress and all that to happen in our body, that same energy that causes that can be overcome when we realize like, oh, I don't have to respond with stress and fear and worry. I can do the opposite. It's almost like you have to set a mental trigger. And like you said, you're Greek, I think Greek mnemonics, right? The Greeks developed a system. It's almost like, and maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but it's like you have to set a mental trigger that reminds you that when a stressful event happens or something that's triggering you is going to come up, instead of being triggered by it, it's almost like, oh no, this is a great gift. This is an opportunity for me to practice more.
Yeah.
To practice being less resistant to the things that you're normally resisting. And this is the kind of mentality and state of being that we are beginning to adopt in our own perception of reality. And like any habit, the more we practice it, the better we get at it. And then suddenly when you have a few people, look, you know this, coherence entrains incoherence, right? So the frequency that an individual who has, let's say like these beings that have just, they may not have ever heard the word heart brain coherence, they might not know anything about it, but the ancients, or even I'm sure there's modern people now, they have so committed to the development of this internal state that they have risen above all of their human limitations, and they have become a reflection of this life force that is allowing them to exist in the first place. And then they are coming from that perspective back into this one, bridging the polarities, bridging all the division that may have once been in their perception of reality. And they are living as a whole embodiment of what they have the potential to be. When we, as the people we believe ourselves to be, practice these levels of heart-brain coherence, that now we have a word for it, now we have an idea, and we have science that backs it up, which is really important for our modern age. Somebody else said, like, science is the modern language of mysticism in many ways, because quantum sciences prove what all the ancients have been saying forever.
Yeah, and you know, and I think science is relatively new and relate to what the mystics knew. You know, there aren't even words. Words can't even begin to verbalize what the mystic experience and being a mystic means. That's a whole different journey that we can take together at some point. But you know, people are of material world and they want to touch and feel and you know acknowledge something. And the reality is something much more than that, in my view. Right? That's been my experience. You know, this is a holographic projection, right? It's only when you start to go internally and start to tap into the bigger vista of the universe and where you situated in that, then really it's mind blowing, man. It's absolutely mind blowing.
Well, like the atom, right? The atom is point, I don't even know how many, it's like point oh, there's a whole bunch of zeros,
Yeah.
0.01% matter or particle, and the rest of it's just energy and wave. We,
Yeah. Yeah.
most everybody we know is only focused on that one little, that isn't even hardly in existence, percentage of the particle of an atom. And it's only there when we observe it. As soon as we look away, it's not there. When the reality is, we're the wave. So it's like, we got it in quantum physics. We have to choose to get back into that wave. And then the way we create and interact with the particles of life, the material appearance, is going to take on this whole other reality. That whole other reality will be infused into it. Then we won't want to create strife or discord within ourselves. We won't want to create it with others in the world around us. And in fact, we're going to want to do the opposite.
Right.
We're going to wake up and realize, like, wow, life has given us a garden to tend, to take care of, both internally and in the world around us. How can we support one another in a way that is going to bring out the best, so that we can see and experience what the possibilities of living in a fully coherent state from the inside out, from this earth into the solar system, galaxies, and universes, like
into the multi dimensions of the universe. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that I want people to know, that, you know, we've touched on a lot of themes, and I think the programming has always been the fact that they are nothing. They don't matter. They are not important. And you know, my message and your message is really, you matter. You're here for a reason and a purpose. You have gifts to share with humanity, because when you shine your gifts, all of humanity shines with your gifts, right? And that's super important. And the sense of empowerment, because when you can click on that you are powerful, multidimensional, divine being and really radiate with that, my God, the coherence, that just that statement alone for me, I feel tingling. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, that's what we're doing. We are getting each other to the point where we're getting beyond the physical appearance of things.
Yeah.
And it's more of a it's sensations and feelings. And the way we start to perceive reality from that place is very different in that it's not the linear way that we're used to perceiving things. It becomes multidimensional. And within that, and this probably sounds way out there to a lot of people, but they're going to find it's absolutely real. These sensations and feelings lead to the perception of everything as living geometric fields.
Oh, absolutely.
And we see that in nature everywhere, like the snowflake, the snow crystal, this nautilus shell. But the reality is, whatever is causing our heart to beat, like the heart isn't just a pump that's causing blood to go through our body, it's literally vortexing the water in our being. When we begin to perceive reality from this more holistic, less fragmented state of being that we have the potential to perceive it from, then this energy that's animating us, that's allowing us to exist here, is a living geometric field. And it is the mystery, the magnificence, the profound, undescribable, miraculous, multi-orgasmic, or it's like the best orgasm you've ever felt times infinity. And that doesn't even begin to explain.
So once you start to taste a little bit of that, you know, for you know, it's really chasing that and being in that and it really embodying that. That's really what I was going to go back. I think you said something very important from a geometric perspective. You know, Tesla was talking about, you want to find out the secrets of the universe. Sound frequency is important, right? And you know, from a morphological perspective, when a human being is created, so you got the egg and the sperm being fertilized, and then you start the mitotic division, right? So the one cell divides, and you know, you got the vesica piscis within 1 and 2, and then 2 become 4, 4 become 8, 8 becomes 16, and start following this whole Fibonacci sequence. What do you think the first organ created in the body is? Do you know what it is?
The heart, right? It's not the
Heart.
brain.
Yeah, it's like a 528 cell division. So that's the first thing that's created in the body. Then the tongue, and then the brain, right? And then everything else that comes with that. So, you know, there's a whole connection point between Indian mystics and Kriya Yoga is part of that lineage with Paramahansa Yogananda and Mahavajar Babaji, where you're really connecting with a heart. There's a technique called Khechari Mudra where you're putting the tip on the top of your, there's a little soft palate, there's a little point on the bottom part of your skull, and making that connection point with the tip of your tongue, and then visualize, there's a whole technique associated with it.
Connect the channels between the front and the back of the body, which
not only connecting with the heart, it's connecting with the heart energies, with the third eye, right? And radiate, like it's a whole connection point. And it's really releasing the Merkaba, which is the light body. You know, there's a whole technique in releasing the Merkaba. And once you can release your Merkaba, then really, you're really good. You really can go anywhere you want.
Explain what a Merkaba is, because that's a different, people don't know that word necessarily.
So your Merkaba is your light body. It's the core essence of your soul, of what you are, essentially.
It's bioelectromagnetic energy that we've been talking about that's animating our being.
100%. It is who you are, not this body. It is that essence. And your Merkaba, once you understand what your Merkaba is, that field, and you can play around with it, it's incredible what you can do with it. I was a student of Drunvalo Melchizedek. I don't know if you heard of who he is.
Yeah.
But he's got he's such an amazing storyteller, and listening to his stories is what really captured me my imagination and my drive to dig deeper into that stuff.
Yeah.
But we haven't got it. We're almost like a 2
2 hours in.
And we haven't even got to your story, man. Your story is amazing.
It's just a story. What
it's
what's more, what I feel like the essence of everything that we've been talking about here tonight is essentially that, like, getting people to recognize that they can transition from viewing reality as who they believe themselves to be into this light body, this energy body. And that's really the shift that needs to take place in many ways. It doesn't need to, but it's the shift that is required to take place if we're going to transform the appearance of this whole hellish purgatory realm that everything seems to be spiraling into something that's more uplifting and elevating. And we can do this. We can do this. Like, we are made for this.
I would offer to people 2 things. If you're really interested in resonating, but you find what we're saying a little hard to follow, follow these steps. Connect with your breath. Just start following this really simple process where every morning you're waking up, take a deep breath, really connect with it, really embody what that breath is. Follow the movements of the breath. That's number 1. Don't be provoked. Be in a state of neutrality all the time. Don't get engaged with one or the other, right? If you can get into like a higher renewing emotion where you're grateful, where you're appreciative, where you're loving, where all of that's actually beneficial, because that actually helps all of humanity. And in time, as you begin to practice that, more will be revealed, because more of what your soul essence requires will come to you as you're ready for it. Right?
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. And
okay.
we're not alone. Like,
so I want to ask you.
What you and I are doing. We're here to do it. I said, this is what you and I are doing. We're here to create space for others to do this.
Well, I believe it's not only us, but I think there's going to be it's going to be a tribe. I really feel like it's a whole tribe coming together right now. Some amazing, magical people. I feel incredibly blessed to have connected with you and with Nina and with Tara and with these amazing other people around us as well. And I think there's so much that wants to be created. So I'm going to allow it to be what it needs to be. And I've got really good feeling about this. So
me too.
So before we leave, I want to give you the last word, and then where people can get in touch with you. What are the current projects that you're working on? You want people to know what support, if anything, that you need.
Jeez, this is going to be a whole episode in and of itself. So let me simplify it. So I have 2 companies in the natural foods industry that I have that are kind of like, they're what support me in this world.
Right.
One is Living Nuts with a Z.com. It's a certified organic sprouted raw food snack company.
Amazing.
I've had it. My brother and I started it 18 years ago. I can't even believe it's been that long.
Wow.
And we've kept it going this whole time. The other one is this shirt that I'm wearing, Tourmaline Spring. One of my closest friends literally preserved one of the last great natural sources of spring water in this country. He prevented a large multinational corporation from acquiring it and drilling into it and destroying it. And we've just been doing everything we can to keep this thing going. But to me, this more represents this internal purity that we all have within us.
Right.
But that we only get purified from when we choose to drink from it. So I have those 2 companies. I'm doing that. I have a book that I'm about to release, which is called The Fight to Enlight. Initiation Through the Heart is the Only Way to Win.
Amazing.
Which is, it was picked up by Eckhart Tolle's publishing agency for a long time. And I was in a contract with them for a long time. And I ended up canceling the contract because all of these publishers they were like, well, you need a platform, you need a bigger platform. And I didn't have one at the time when I was in the contract with them because I'd been in prison.
Yeah, and that's the story I want to touch on.
Yeah.
We're going to connect again. We're definitely going to connect again because people need to hear that story. That story is magic, Seth.
Yeah. So I have that book, and then I have another blog, I'mAwakeNowWhat.com, which is probably where I'll release the book and kind of do a lot of blogging stuff through for now. And yeah, my personal Facebook page, I'm pretty active and just randomly posting videos and my thoughts on that. So,
and pretty soon we're going to have a woke multimedia company that encompasses publishing.
ooh, that's a good name. No, but this isn't live. Try to get that, awokemultimedia.com.
Yeah, man. That's that. Yeah.
You know,
you know what? We're creating in the moment.
yeah. That's a great URL.
Yeah, I'm gonna chase it down right now.
Yeah, awakemultimedia.com.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I thought about that. There are people that, once the drive is there, I mean, all of that can be created. I even thought about that whole torrent model or that Bitcoin model where the sum of the part make up the whole part. You know what I mean? And there's so many amazing people that have such amazing stories to talk about. We just need to give them a platform to do that and let them speak, right?
So that's what we got to figure out. Like, going through the whole publishing thing, like I could have had a bunch of publishing agencies publish my book, but at the end of the day, they're like, well, you got to sell it. And it's like, to sell it, you need a platform. So it's like, the first thing that we're talking about is like, how do we, and I love what, like, what Nina has showed me that they've been doing with the Divine Feminine Roundtable.
Yeah.
Magenta Pixie and a couple of the other women have pretty decent sized followings, and it's getting them a lot of recognition. It's getting that divine. We need to figure out a way to pull the right hearts and minds together, get something in the plan, and then make it go viral instead of all these viruses that everybody's worried about. Like, let's make this stuff go viral, know?
And here's what I'm talking about, right? Like, if you look at the whole torrent model, or if you look at the whole Bitcoin model, right? So you've got a network, I've got a network, Magenta Pixie has a network. And so, you can subscribe to that particular network, which is composed of the bigger sum, and, videos go on and boom, we just got to figure the mechanics. There's a little bit more to that, but we got to figure out the mechanics.
Let's do it. Let's literally do it, because what's that? Is that a tattoo you have right there?
Yeah. It's Yahweh.
Are you Jewish?
I'm not. But this has so much significance.
Hebrew, yeah.
This particular name, because there are 99 names for God. This particular name were uttered by the priests in Egypt once every year. And it was it has so much power, right? Words, and the way that they are connected and the way you connect with them could actually manifest reality in ways that you cannot even begin to conceive. So that's one of the words that I'm always connected to, which is God, right? I mean, the higher source, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I am a servant of God.
Me too, brother. Together, like, here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll put some URLs, and I'll put, like, if you got email addresses that people want to get in touch with you, if that's okay with you. And for everyone watching this, if you've got ideas on how we can create awokemedia.com, hit us up. We want to hear about it for sure.
Yeah.
So much. Oh, last words. Any last words?
Let's make it super simple. Heart, brain, coherence.
Yeah.
I not to, like, be unoriginal or bring something, like, let's get people on the path that they can be, this is it. Like, this is really the first step.
It's coming, brother. It really is. I love you so much, man. Thank you for taking your time for that 2 hours, sacred time, 2 hours. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with people. And thank you for coming back in part 2.
Yes, yes. I perceive many more coming. So.
All right, man. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Yeah. All right.
Where are we here?